We are lucky to be joined by not one, but two wonderful speakers and experts in the field. First and foremost, we have Janet Cobb with us. Janet has worked in the nonprofit area her entire career. She is a certified fundraising executive, otherwise known as a CFRE, and certified nonprofit professional who specializes in working with small to mid-sized nonprofits across the country to help them build capacity and acquire the skills they need to support and expand their efforts. She's actually a coach with us here at Bonterra, as well as has her own consultancy, and is just a wealth of knowledge. She's held a wide variety of positions in her past, including director of development, communications manager, executive director, has handled budgets anywhere from 50,000 to 8 million, and really integrates her skills that she's learned in education and nonprofit management to bring to her clients and customers. So we're super lucky to have Janet here to talk to us about some donor engagement, and joined by Jason Wallace, who we've had on webinars before to help talk about volunteer engagement. It felt like the perfect fit to bring him back for this mashup session. Jason is a super skilled volunteer engagement expert with 20 years in nonprofit, private, and government sectors, including 3 White House administrations. He's led teams with over 20,000 total in their volunteer base, and his expertise is in crafting transformational engagement strategies that spark enduring change and attract and retain quality volunteers. So, 2 experts in their unique settings. Super excited to have you both with us. Janet, I know you're going to lead us off, so I will let you take it away, and you'll hear from Jason in a little bit. Super excited to have you both. And here we go. Janet, you're on mute.
Sorry. How many years have we been doing this?
Every time, you know what? We're here, we're all together, we're all human. One day we'll get the mute button.
Thank you for having me, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. My section today will focus on tools for donor retention, re-engaging lapsed donors, and using Q3 to prepare for a successful Q4. And then Jason will join us, and he'll take it away with tools for volunteer retention, re-engaging lapsed volunteers, and using Q1 and 2 to prepare for the second half of the year. And then a really good section on best practices during election season. So that's what we're here for. If that's not what you were thinking about today, that's okay. Maybe the next webinar will touch your favorite topics. So let's see what we can do today. So the first thing is about building relationships, which is where donor retention comes in. And the reason this is so important is because donor retention rates are really, really low. For every 10 people who give a first gift, only 1 or 2 are going to give a second gift. Now, if you get them to the second or third gift, that retention rate, the national average, goes up to about 60, but that makes the general retention rate about 40%. So for every 10 people who make a gift, only 4 are going to give you another gift, and that's not pretty. So we have to figure out ways to retain those donors by building good, strong relationships. We also want to do that because it takes less capacity to keep new connection or keep ongoing connections rather than build new ones, right? So to continue with a friendship and a relationship is much easier than going out and acquiring new donors. I talk to a lot of nonprofits any given day, and everyone wants to know how they get more donors. And in reality, if you just keep getting 10 new gifts and only 1 or 2 give again, you're just on this vicious cycle. So let's focus on being good to the ones we have and building those relationships so that we don't have to work so hard. And as we know from being a child, what we're taught as children, everything we know we learned in kindergarten, right? Saying thank you is the right thing to do. Appreciation is polite. We want to make sure that we are building relationships with our donors to show appreciation and to help them stay engaged in a cause they care about. And, that's why we want to move from what I would call transactional relationships, or transactional thank yous into relational thank yous, right? If I make a gift, I expect a thank you note. But if you then turn around and tell me the difference my gift made 6 months later, I'm not necessarily expecting that. I appreciate it. I feel like I made a difference, right? So you want to make sure that you're not just focused on transactional thank yous and transactional relationships, because then people begin to feel like they're your ATM, and that's not good. And the other reason we want to focus on donor retention is because it makes perfect sense. If someone has given you one gift, they are more likely to give you another gift than someone who has never given you a gift. Okay, so we just want to make sure that we are helping to create this relationship by all the time, everywhere, creating a culture of gratitude. I used to talk about an attitude of gratitude, and then my daughter became a teenager and I really learned what attitudes were. And attitudes come and go, right? Attitudes shift, but cultures are the thing that underlies everything that we do, right? So we need to create a culture of gratitude from every single person in the organization towards every single person connected to the organization. So whether it's the, you know, person who answers the phone to talk to clients, whether it's the VP of development who's talking to the, $1 million donors, everybody needs to understand that all of this is only possible because we all are doing what we can to make it all happen. And therefore, we should be grateful for the opportunities we have and for everybody else who's involved, right? So creating that culture of gratitude is really critical. And in that process of creating the culture of gratitude, one thing that we want to do, because donors over and over and over again in donor surveys and in studies will say one of the things that makes them not give again to an organization is when they don't know what their money has done. And this doesn't mean they want to see what bills were paid or that you made your budget or that you reached your goals, right? Because those are all internal, somewhat arbitrary things. What they want to know is what were the tangible differences and what were the transformational differences. And that means you're focusing on outcomes, not outputs, right? So you're not just talking about the jobs, the number of jobs attained, or the reading grade levels raised, or the number of meals served, but the difference it made in the lives of the people that experienced those outputs, right? Because that's where we're creating relationships built on empathy rather than sympathy or pity. Because sympathy and pity, if that's a motivator for giving, it gets very, very exhausting. It's kind of like anger being a motivator, right? Sometimes anger is the thing, or frustration is the thing that catapults people into action, right? Into giving, into volunteering, into anything like that. But that's hard to sustain. There's got to be other moments and other emotions involved. And when we create empathy, when we're helping people to see that the money we're giving, the money we're donating is we're donating it because the people we're helping are like us, right? We all have common vision. We all have common dreams. We all have common hopes. We all have common fears. And when we can connect on those levels and show people the difference their dollars have made, that's going to be far more sustainable than if you're just talking about, we had a $10,000 goal and we reached it. Thank you. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to the donor. Okay, so we may not have done all of this very well. So we have lapse donors, right? We have people who gave once or gave a few times and don't give anymore. So how are we going to re-engage them and mend that relationship with them? The first thing is, don't be timid, right? Don't be afraid, because remember, fundraising isn't begging, right? Fundraising isn't coercion. Fundraising isn't about treating people like an ATM, right? Fundraising is really about finding people who care about what you care about, who what they can give is money, right? They may not be able to give their time, they may not be able to give their talent, but they're giving their money to create the world that they want to live in. They're not doing it to fulfill your mission. That's not their point. Their point is to fulfill their mission, to create the world that they want. So we have to be very assertive in helping everyone know that their money helps create that world, whatever it is, right? If they want to see a world where there is no child going to bed hungry, then let them know that if they give you money, you're going to help make sure that at least the children in your area aren't going to bed hungry, or any of the myriad of causes that we have amongst us. Okay, so don't be timid, and focus on how you're telling your stories. Okay, what are you doing? Wait, did I miss the slide? I didn't. No. Okay, must be the next one. Okay, so we want to focus on making sure that our data and our visuals and our narrative are all combining to tell a perfect story, right? To tell a good, solid story. Think of it as reading a good novel, or watching a good movie, right? It takes very personal stories. It takes the characters and the actors on the screen, the characters in the book, and puts them into situations where there are universal truths being encountered, right? So through visuals and data, you're helping people tap into those universal truths. You're enlightening them. You're engaging them through the way that you tell the story, through the narrative and the pictures or the images on the screen. And then you're combining the data inside the stories to help educate and explain about results, right? And it's the magic of all of those pieces that will make someone say, oh, wait, I've got to get involved, right? That's what I want. I want to be part of that world. And so I'm going to give again. And that helps with donor retention as well, of course, but it also helps with lapsed donors. The other thing is you want to make sure that you are acting like Captain Kirk, right? If you're a Star Trek fan from way back when, helping people to make decisions. Many of us think we make decisions based on logic. Oh, well, they need $10,000 because then they can do A, B, and C, and that makes sense, right? But it's not. We don't need to over-explain our intricate back-end details. We need to bring the key logic to it. No one should suffer needlessly. No animal should suffer. The arts are important. Everyone should be able to experience the arts. Like whatever it is we're talking about, there is some logic and there is fact involved. And that's Dr. Spock. If you're a Trekkie, that's Dr. Spock, the very logical one. And then there was the doctor, Dr. McCoy, who was all emotion. And Dr. Kirk was the one that brought those two things together and said, this is the solution, right? And so we are, as fundraisers and as storytellers, we are the ones that combine all of that to help the lapse donor see that it makes perfect sense if they want to create the world that they want to create, given the vision and the mission that you're involved in, your cause area. If that's important to them, it makes perfect sense for them to give. And when they give, they're going to feel better. Good things are going to happen. And so we're we're making sure that we touch base with them in a way that says, we need you back. We need you back. You've made a difference. We can't do this work without you. Not in a way that we're creating saviorism of any kind, right? But in a way that we're saying, your dollar makes a difference, your involvement makes a difference. So, as much as I am a firm believer that as fundraisers, it is not our job, and we do not have the time or the capacity to convince people to believe what we believe, right? If you come to me and you say that you believe in this cause, this is your mission, and it's not my mission, it's not what drives me, it's not what I'm passionate about, don't spend your time and energy and the limited resources you have to try and convince me to think like you think or to make your cause my cause. What you're trying to do is amplify your cause and your message and your solution to whatever problem or issue you're addressing so that the people who agree can find you, right? They know you exist. Once you have those people in the room, then you employ the arts of persuasion. Then you need to make sure that maybe not all in one email communication or one appeal letter, but over the course of your communication strategy, you are touching on facts, logos, the information they need to understand the problem, understand the solution you have. You want to use graphics and charts and infographics. People need to know what goes on behind the scenes because they don't know that if you have four, you know, live productions, performing arts productions a year, that in between those productions, a gazillion things happen, right? You got to let them know. You've got to give them information. That's one thing you have to do. The other thing you have to do, because we know emotions open wallets, so to speak, right? Emotions are important. You have to lead them to the emotions you want them to feel, right? If you lead them to the brink of tears and then give them hope, you're using pathos in a way that is going to make them act. You cannot focus only on the negative because then they are too overwhelmed. The emotion is too strong. It turns to despair or disappointment or disillusionment rather than to there is hope and I can help bring that about. So you've got to take them through those emotions in a way that's going to make them want to participate, not just give up. And then the ethos part is where you're demonstrating that your solution and the way that you're doing it and the people you have in the seats are the ones that are going to drive this home, right? And that's where credibility comes in. And then you have to have urgency. And urgency is not, it's Giving Tuesday, and so you have to hit our deadline. Or it's not, year end, and it's not, this is our goal, and, we want to match it by, June 1st. So that's our urgency. That's a false urgency. The urgency is what happens if this work doesn't get done? What are the detrimental things that are going to happen in the world? That's where your urgency comes from. So you have to make sure that you're touching on all of those things through your communication plan during, throughout the year and between every single campaign. But in Q3, you want to make sure that you are communicating. Most nonprofits do not communicate enough, right? If you are only communicating once a month, you're probably not communicating enough. You want to make sure that you are communicating consistently and regularly across all the channels. You got to do all the things because people are bombarded with content now. And that makes a lot of nonprofits pull back. But anybody who's in this field and really works hard at understanding what motivates people and how the things happen, they know that you've got to be in that mix of what otherwise is considered noise, and you got to figure out how you're going to stand out through it. But if people don't hear from you often, they forget you exist. There are other organizations doing similar things. There are other things grabbing their attention. You've got to make sure you're hitting all of the channels as often as you can in ways that resonate with them, so that they know that if they're engaged with you, the world's going to be a better place. So then you want to make sure in all of those things, you can't just keep repeating yourself, right? You can't just keep saying the same thing over and over again. And you can't just be talking about you, right? You can't just be sharing what your programs are and, you focused. You have to be focused on the person who's the reader, or the leader, the listener, or the person watching what you're doing. And these different types of content can give you ideas for different types of messaging. Every message, every media post, every video, every TikTok or Instagram reel, or whatever all those things are called, right? They should each have a different purpose and different kinds of content, so that you're reaching different levels of emotion and interest and logic for people. Okay, so think about all the different ways, all the different things that you want to include, and break those up and give them out in bite-sized pieces, so that everyone knows exactly what this communication is about. And one thing I like to help people think about is verb tense engagement. When you are doing an ask, you are talking about future conditional tense, right? If you give us money, this could happen. We could do this, right? Conditional tense. Once someone makes a gift to you, then you're talking to them in future tense. This will happen now because you gave a gift. Now this good thing will happen. Then you communicate during your programs and during the things that you do, and you use present tense. This is what is happening right now. You're sharing progress. Then you move to past tense. That's reporting impact. Because you gave, these great things happened. And then you go back to the conditional. If you give, these good things are possible, right? So conditional, future, present, past. If everything you are doing is conditional, then you're asking too much, right? You've got to get those other pieces in to make sure that people are ready. So between now and Q4, when you're hitting Giving Tuesday or year end, try the different channels. Oops, I'm trying to go back one real quick before I hand you over to Jason. Look at all your different channels. Look at the different types of emails and posts you're making. And then look at the tenses you're using in the letters and in the emails and things you're writing, in the conversations you're having. And then you will be ready for Q4 to really knock home your year-end fundraising. All right, so Jason, it's all yours.
Hey, Janet, I love that. Can you go back one?
Sure.
I love the verb tense engagement. I've never seen this. This is actually really helpful. So thank you for sharing that. This is probably my favorite part of it. I've never thought about like how you talk to them based upon where they are in that ladder of engagement. So I love that. Cool.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Can y'all go to the emojis and give Janet some love. Give her some hand claps or some praises or something. She did an amazing job here. And I'm going to be talking to you today about refreshing your volunteer campaigns for the second half of the year's success. One of the things is I jumped on in January and we did something about like how to re-engage folks that are, because holiday giving is big. And then all of a sudden, I love the emojis. I love it. Thank y'all for putting those in there. Jenny did great work. But now we're at the second half, right? How do we keep folks engaged? Can you go to the next slide for me? A little bit about me. There we go. San Bernardino native. Anybody here from California? Anybody from California? Nobody? Okay, that's fine. I live in DC now. Can you go back to the? Yeah, perfect. DC now. Okay, California. Okay, I see some California folks. Cool. I'm from San Bernardino originally. Served in multiple nonprofits. Again, Amanda mentioned I've worked for 3 White House administrations, as well as the mayor's office in DC. When I ran the My Brother's Keeper initiative there, and then I own my own engagement firm where I focus really on community engagement, digital marketing. But how do you connect what your mission and the work that you do to the audiences that you'd like to serve? And next slide. These are some photos I just put up here. You'll see some me with the Bushes, me with the Obamas, one with Harris. Harrison family. I put one here of me jumping out of a plane. Quick story, I never actually jumped out of the plane. The guy that I was strapped to, he was stronger than me and he jumped out of the plane. So I just thought it was a fun photo, so I stuck that there. But yeah. And then the one at the bottom here, you'll see the president and first lady and me in the background, my earpiece in my ear. So a lot of the work that I've done for the administration has been around engaging, right? Like I'm usually the first face that people see before they see these folks, but I've been able to travel around the world with them. Next slide. So I'm not a fan of PowerPoint slides, and let me tell you why. Because one of the most detrimental types of PowerPoint slides are those that are excessively wordy, where the presenter simply reads everything verbatim from that slide. The approach not only bores the audience, but it also undermines the effectiveness of this presentation. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but a lot of what I'm going to do today is going to require you all to jump in this chat and talk to me. I know some of y'all eating lunch, y'all out and about, and you got it in the headphones. It's called Blue Goose Solutions, Simone. But jump in the chat. I'm on the chat here. So I'm going to ask y'all some questions. I need y'all to jump in with me, okay? Next slide. And actually, before I jump in that, Simone, the name is Blue Goose Solutions. The president has 3 podiums. One podium is called a toast lectern. One podium is called a falcon, and the other one is called a blue goose. So I've named my business after the podium that I traveled around the world with. So that's kind of quick fact about White House stuff. So why do we need volunteers? Why do we need volunteers? Put a 1 in the chat if you're wearing too many hats. If you're wearing all the hats in your organization, put a 1 in the chat, right? 1, 1, 1. See some 1s there. If you have some staff burnout, put a 2 in there. If you need some industry expertise, put a 3 in there. Okay, tell me if anybody have any limited funding, put a 4. If you have limited funding. Okay, see some 4. Okay, I see a lot of 4s there. All right, what about if you're looking to engage with the community? Put a 5 in the chat. 5, looking to engage, perfect. What about when it comes to hiring? Hiring folks, you need to hire the right folks. You want to see how they do ahead of time. Put a 6 in the chat, right? Or if you want your board members to engage, right? I have this thing that I call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I love that. One of the things that I do, I have this term that I call a barbecue board, and it's like before you started the nonprofit, if the people that are currently on your board, if you would have invited them to a barbecue at your house 2 years before you started your nonprofit, would they be there? And if the answer is yes, there's a good chance they're not volunteering, they're not as engaged, right? Because they're doing it for you and not necessarily doing it because they're tied specifically to that mission. I see a lot of 6s. That's too many 6s. You got to get 2. You can't do 3 or more. It's too many 6s. Cool. Next slide. So it's figuring out. It is figuring out. It's figuring out. Wait, can you go back? Perfect. It is figuring out, why do people volunteer? You ain't got the answers, right? You don't have the answers to know why people are doing the things that they're doing. But figuring out why do they volunteer. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Thank you, Janet. I coined that barbecue board. I made that up myself. Okay, next slide. All right, next slide here is talking about who volunteers, right? Who volunteers more? I'm going to ask you some questions. I want y'all to just drop it in the chat, the answers. So these are provided by CNCS and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And who volunteers more, men or women? What do y'all think? Women, women, women. I still got some ones in the chat. we beyond the ones. Women, women, women. Okay, both. So women volunteer more than men do. Statistically, women volunteer more than men. Next part of it is, who do you think volunteers more? People that are full-time, who work part-time, or who are unemployed? Full-time, part-time, or unemployed? All right. Answer is full-time. People who are full-time work more than people that are part-time and unemployed. What if they are married or single? Married or single? Married or single, married or single, married, married, single, single. Answer here is married. Studies show that people that are married volunteer more than, you can't say both, it's one or, you got to pick one. Come on, Frank. That's cool. People with kids under the age of 18 or people without kids? With kids, without kids, with kids, with kids, without, okay. With kids is the answer. People with kids with under the age of 18 volunteer more. What about people that are higher salary earners or lower salary earners? Higher or lower? Higher, lower, higher, lower. So there's a mix here. Answer is higher. Higher salary earners volunteer more than lower salary earners, right? And we're doing this, right? So we want to understand, like, statistically speaking, who is more likely to volunteer with you, right? And if we don't know these answers, it's going to be hard to attract and gain more folks, right? So next is people that are college educated or people that are not college educated. College and no college, college and no college. I think everybody got this one right. College educated. All right, this one here is seniors or young folks. Seniors or young folks. This is a trick question. This is a trick question. So seniors actually volunteer. So the answer is young people. Young adults actually volunteer more than seniors do. Now, the number of young people volunteer more. However, the number of hours that a senior puts in is more, right? So one person that's 65 years or older will work more hours than probably 10 young adults. But more young adults would do it. If you think about it, a lot of these schools require volunteer hours. So nationwide, people are having to do it. John, we can't put both. You got to pick one. Again, Haley, some of these folks are required. But the folks that are seniors tend to do it on their own time. So, but young adults is the answer there. Now, here's one. People that volunteer for the same organization or for different organizations. Same orgs or different. People are more than likely to volunteer at the same organization than jump around to different orgs. What is the most popular volunteer activity? What is the most popular volunteer activity? We got mailing, we got food bank, we got childcare, outdoor work, animals, food, event setup, events, church. The most popular volunteer activity is around food. Is around food services. Yep. And here's one right here. Sometimes people get this right. All right. What is the number one reason people volunteer? The number one reason. Can't afford to give money, to give time. You see, caring, to give back. I don't see it yet. I don't see it. Yep, there we go. Who got it? There we go. Is that Arlie? Arlie? The number one reason is because somebody asked. That's the number one reason. Literally somebody asking them to do it. Greg, you put that in after I said it, but it's cool. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a picture of me before I started my nonprofit. This is me, happy. This is when I started my nonprofit. I was super excited. I was super happy. I was super engaged. We're going to take over the world. We're going to help, and we're going to do all the things and change the world, right? And then 1 year later, next slide. This is me 1 year later. This was, me doing it all by myself. Somewhat just exhausted, trying to make the best thing happen. So next slide. What I thought was that I can get my passion, right? What I brought to the table, my passion for the work that I wanted to do and the folks that I wanted to support that were similar to me, I can strap that on my back and I can just push forward and just allow sheer grit to just get me there, right? And anybody knows anything about this cartoon, what happens next? I realized that it blew up in my face, and I needed to go and find some help. I needed to find some support. Next slide. But without knowing how to do it the right way, I tended to attract the wrong people to the organization, which ended up, next slide, doing more worse than more damage to the organization and to work that I was doing than being more helpful. Next slide. So I had to think. I had to think about what I was going to do next. Amanda's like, this is a new one, because Amanda, she's seen me do the Wiley stuff before, but this is a new slide. Okay. I had to think about what I was going to do, right? And I decided that, next slide, I needed some help, right? So I truly needed some help on how I was going to do it. So through reading books, through trainings and exercises, and just really diving into how things work, I was able to, the chat got quiet. Can y'all go to the next slide? You go to the next slide? You know who you are. Is anybody else like this? Am I the only one? Y'all got real quiet in the chat. I feel like anybody else can relate to this. You've all been there. Carly's been there. Cameron's been there. Okay, I see you. Don't leave me hanging like I'm the only one. Y'all know who this is, by the way? Y'all know who this is, right? Okay, y'all know who it is. Okay, yeah, okay, cool. Maggie, like, I know who it is. Valerie, like, I know who it is. All right, next slide. So one of the things we talked about today, one of the deliverables I wanted to share with you today, is about using Q1 and Q2 to prepare for the second half of the year, right? And next slide, please. Is who are your volunteers? What are your stats? I led this conversation by talking about national stats around who volunteers versus who doesn't volunteer. Do you know your stats of who is volunteering in your organization, right? What does your numbers reflect what I just shared? Yes or no? Do your numbers somewhat reflect what I shared, or is it completely different? Okay, some of y'all not really, some yes, some of you no. And then understanding how often people volunteer. So one of the things is that, like, if you have multiple, like, for instance, anybody know Martha's Table in DC? Yes. Okay. So I led volunteer engagement there, and one of the things they had programs that did food, programs that did childcare, programs that did things around the unhoused communities, and we were able to see trends that some people volunteered for everything, and that some people only volunteered in the area that they were more interested in, whether the unhoused community or for children or for food access. But understanding what people volunteer for was very important, was very helpful. Also, are we capturing feedback, right? When people show up, do we just say thank you and they leave? Are we doing something to actually capture, was that a good experience for them, right? And then later on, I'm gonna talk about some tools that I have. So I actually have a one pager in which you can capture feedback and you can use it very easily. I have that a little bit later on. Also, who is your volunteer audience? Like, who are you trying to serve? Next slide. Perfect. So this right here is something that we typically do, is identifying our audience, right? And you see this a lot in marketing, you see this a lot maybe in donor, and Janet can kind of speak to that maybe, but like really identifying who is your audience, right? Who do you want to volunteer? You mentioned veterans helping veterans. I see that, Paul. Where do they spend their time? Where do they already volunteer? What are they passionate about? And is the orientation that you do designed specifically for that audience? So capturing understanding. And what I do is we go through a process where we actually identify, we find a photo and we put it up on the wall and we speak to this particular volunteer audience. And we had like 7 or 8 at the time there at Martha's Table, because it was so many different programs. Some of them is just 1, some of them is 2, but really identifying and understanding who your audience is something that I don't see happening very often. And one of the things is, next slide. And then real quick, that photo that you saw there, I also have a tool for that. So if you all are looking for how do I create this, I have a tool. It's a one pager, and you could just easily put it in there, as well as it has a AI tool in it as well. So you can actually type in a few keywords and it'll craft a lot of this for you. And then you can actually compare to see if it works. All right, next slide. Why do they lapse? We're not talking about like how to just ensuring that, you know, we're getting more volunteers. We're talking about getting lapsed donors. We're talking about getting lapsed volunteers. So understanding the reason behind the lapse is important. And if you're not capturing feedback, then it's hard to do that. You know, usually it's because it doesn't match expectations, right? They have something in their head that they expected to do, and when they volunteered, it did not match that reason, right? Another thing is the number of volunteers. I see this as a huge killer of volunteer retention, is that people will always overshoot the number of volunteers they need, right? So typically having the appropriate number of volunteers is ideal. But if you don't know the appropriate number, always undershoot, right? Because people that are worked harder, that work hard, that are tired at the end of the volunteer shift will volunteer again, right? And you can adjust. People that are just standing around doing nothing won't come back. If you get people that are standing around and there's too many volunteers, there's nothing to do, and I feel like I just kind of wasted my time, I'm not going to come back. I'm not going to come back. So it's better to overwork people than to underwork people. So if you don't know how many volunteers you need, shoot low. Shoot low. You'll get them to come back. Next is the work is not tied to the impact. If the work that they're doing is tied to the impact, the reason why I wanted to do that, I showed up to help X, Y, and Z. Therefore, I want to have the work that I do be tied to that impact, right? If the work is not directly tied to the impact, you have to communicate how it can be tied, right? So if it's like I'm filing papers, but I'm here for an organization that is fighting, you know, homelessness, then like you have to, even if I'm not doing the work that's directly tied to that, am I somehow, are you communicating to me that this action that I'm doing here has a direct impact over there, right? We talked about Janet talked about thank yous, right? It's so important. I see, you know, people expect, oh, we say thank you once at the end, right? People need 4 to 5 thank yous during the shift. You know, not like, hey, thank you for doing this. It's like, hey, I appreciate that you X, Y, and Z, being very specific, and again, tying it to the reason why. Another thing is a volunteer orientation. I see most volunteer orientations are like, this is who we are. We started here. This is everything about us. This is what we're doing. And those orientations is very me centered, right? You want to make everything about you, right? So again, I have a tool around volunteer orientations and how to craft it to where you're not saying, we do this. You're saying, hey, you're going to be chopping onions today, and you know, and this many onions actually helps to feed this many people. So today you actually contributed to, you know, 500 people being able to go home and have a meal tonight that they wouldn't have normally had you not done what you did, right? So like tying that volunteer orientation to their impact as well as to the person that's delivering it, right? So every time a person delivers their orientation, they should have their why somehow in there, right? Like, for instance, like I've been homeless before. So when I'm doing things talking about this community, I am sharing that, like, hey, I know what this feels like, right? And a point that I'll share is that, like, hey, when you're in that situation, the worst part isn't the situation. The worst part is being ignored, right? You're ignored, you're not seen, you're not respected, your humanity. And sometimes getting a meal is the only smile that you've gotten all day. And that's worth it, right? So me being able to share that perspective from, like, in my orientation, it hits a different chord, right? And everybody, regardless of if they had that direct experience or if they met somebody with that direct experience, you have some type of why that you can add into that orientation. And the tool that I have kind of really it goes through, and I'll show you what that is a little bit later. And then also people that are connecting things to the organization versus connecting people to each other. People want connection. So it's like, are you finding intentional about ensuring that people are connected to each other while they're there? Next slide. But you have to adjust and then ask, you know. Listening is a superpower. You know what this is a GIF. It's not moving. It's not moving, but this is from the Wolf of Wall Street when he was like, sell me this pen, sell me this pen. And nobody got it right throughout the whole movie. And the answer was that asking is a superpower. Listening is a superpower. So by saying, oh, you know, why do you use pens, or, you know, what do you do for a living, and not just selling the features of a pen is very impactful. So listening is a superpower. And but next slide. I'm rushing through it, y'all. All right, next slide. Re-engaging your volunteers. What do you need to do to re-engage? Y'all know who this is? What do you need? What do you need to re-engage? What do you need to re-engage? Y'all know who this is? Thank you, Kathleen, for the win. Look at y'all. You need reasons. You need reasons. The reasons that was kind of a corny dad joke. Father's Day's around the corner, but to re-engage with people, you need reasons. You need reasons. You know the song, Amanda? You know the song, right, Amanda? No, you don't know the song?
You nailed it, Jason. You nailed it.
Are you going to sing it for us?
Absolutely not.
All right, next slide.
These people don't want that from me.
Next slide. So these are some reasons and ways in which you can volunteer, right? You can re-engage folks. One is observances, right? People love to give during the holidays, right? There's a holiday every single month. There's multiple holidays that may align to your specific mission, right? And I have a tool here that gives you every single holiday and every single month. It's like 50 of them in each month, and you can pick one and use it as a way to re-engage with folks. One is you can ask for their opinion, right, about something. I have a tool for that, but you can ask them for their opinion about something. People love telling you what they know, what they think, right? People love saying what they think. You can highlight their past visit. Hopefully we're capturing photos from their event, but highlighting people's past visit, whether that be online or just directly or in a newsletter. People, it brings back nostalgia, and people are excited to come back and share with their friends and bring people with them. Next is create a sense of urgency and purpose. That's something that's huge, really important. You can share impact stories, personalized engagements and micro commitments. I think actually reaching out individually versus sending blast notes, you get more folks. If you can only email 15 people a day, you'll probably get a higher response rate than if you emailed, 100 one blast email that people are going to ignore anyways. Rewards and recognition is very important, as well as gamification and peer-to-peer connection. That again. Let me check out the chat. Okay, y'all good. No questions in there. Cool. Next slide. Tools for re-engagement. This is the part where the tools are. You go to the next slide here. I'll drop it in the chat here, but this is something that I do offer. What is crazy, right? I used to offer, oh, thank you. I used to offer this thing for free. And then I can actually see who uses it. And it was like 1,000 people taking it, but then nobody was using it. And so I realized, I learned from my business coach that it was actually selfish. And so I offered it. When I offer it for a very low ticket amount, the user rates go up. And what this is templates and swipe files of literally, if you're looking to get processes and streamline your efforts around your volunteer engagement. I mean, literally the volunteer role description template that Shibi talked about earlier about knowing your audience is in there. The feedback form is in there. Orientation session is in there. It's literally 12 different templates and guides that free reduces value that you can use today. And the bonus part of it is that all of these things come with a Canva editable file template. So you can actually go into the Canva, save it as your own, and change all the colors and the fonts to make it match your organization. And I made it super cheap so y'all can take advantage of it, but also more importantly to use it. Like that's the most important thing. I wrote these things by hand and I've used them for years, and I use them with clients. So hopefully that is very helpful to some of you folks in this group. Next slide. And last part of this here is best practices during election season. So during the election season, it can go either way, right? It's pros and cons, right? So the left side is pros, the right side is cons. Ultimately, I want to make sure we have time for questions here, but it's like having internal policies and understanding if people show up with the tire with particular candidates on them. What is your stance on that? Based upon the work that you do, it may shift or change, right? But on the pro side, you get increased motivation and a sense of purpose. You get more groups looking for opportunities to serve. If you are in something that is maybe polarizing, you get increased public awareness, things that are trending. So if you're trying to stop gun violence, and then we're in this red versus blue thing, you may be able to attract more folks that are interested because it's trending at that time. And also, politicians they're easy to get right now. They're easy to get. Like, they're looking for things to do and to serve. You tend to usually have to invite both sides so you don't look like you're playing favorites, but they're easy to get to come and volunteer. On the right side here, it's heightened political polarization. So there's some issues with that. There's distraction from the core mission. And then there's legal challenges, what you can and can't do during the season, or just in general with politics. And again, internal policies are extremely important. Is this my light slide? Can you go one more slide? Oh, and these again, the services that I offer at Blue Goose is around community volunteer engagement as well as digital marketing. We help folks, stop posting flyers on Instagram and get out of that 500 people knowing who you are and actually get to at least 10,000 of engaged followers and consistent growth on social media as well as volunteer engagement within your groups. Is that the last slide? Is there one more? Cool.
Just time for Q&A.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason and Janet. This was super helpful. Folks, feel free to, I'm going to take Jason's idea, throw some emojis in the chat for them to show them some love. Really appreciate both of you with your keen expertise in both donors and volunteers. Kind of in the same vein of what Jason was saying, if folks are looking for some new ways to engage your donors and volunteers and you need tools to help support you, that is a lot of what Bonterra does here with our fundraising and engagement tools. So if you're trying to better engage your donors and volunteers and you think you might need a little extra support, a little bonus, let us know. I'll leave that up for a second here while we get to your wonderful questions. Please drop those in the Q&A. The first question that I saw come in, I'm going to go both to Jason and Janet for this one. Do you have any books that you suggest around some of what you were talking about for better donor engagement or better volunteer engagement? I don't think I've ever seen this come through, and I'm intrigued.
Yeah, what I've used the most, I think sometimes people write books and they have to fill pages. So what's been most helpful for me are textbooks, like actually college textbooks. They have a lot of they're not trying to sell a book because you have to buy it. And then I would say things around psychology, Maslow, just things around psychology and how people work. So it's not necessarily specific to volunteer engagement, but it's specific to people, because you're not doing B2B or B2C, or you're doing H to H, which is human to human, and you're connecting people to things that they genuinely care about in their hearts.
Sounds good to me. And specific to fundraising, though, I have one of those books that too much is shoved into. So if you want theory and background and philosophy, you could go look at mine. But for fundraising specific, I highly recommend No More Duct Tape Fundraising. It's a quick, easy read. It's not too expensive of a book, and it really gives you some great information on how to really engage donors. So that would be my recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you, Janet. This next question came in from Ellen, and I know this comes up quite a bit, and folks trying to integrate social media into both their fundraising and volunteer efforts. So do each of you have one tidbit of advice on, as we look at this back half of the year, how to use maybe some of their social media tools to keep that engagement going?
Yeah. You were a little staticky, Amanda. You're asking about tools for engagement on social media.
Yeah, if you have any strategies that you would recommend to engage both your donors and your volunteers.
Yeah, I'll go first. I would say understanding that social media platforms are not platforms, they're businesses, and understanding how the business works, right? And Instagram or whatever, they make money by keeping people on the platform for as long as possible, including you. So if you're only going and posting and posting and posting and leaving, the algorithm is a fancy term that simply means, is this person helping us make more money? And if so, by helping people stay on the platform longer, and if so, we're going to reward them by giving them more reach, right? That's a fancy term for algorithm, right? So if you're engaging in the community that you're in and not just post, share, and if you are putting out value-based content on a regular, consistent basis, the word is consistent, right? The consistency is the goal, and it's not virality, right? Because with consistently, you'll get that. But you're just trying to be viral every single time, it's not going to work, right? No Stop posting flyers at your events. Stop posting flyers of your events. I know that y'all nonprofits, you'll be doing that. Stop posting flyers on your events, and be engaging, be present, and be there.
Yes, I would agree with everything Jason said. And then I would also say you want to make sure that you are starting conversation, not just making announcements. It's not a megaphone. It's a conversation starter. It's to build community. So figure out ways you can build community by getting engagement in the comments and shares and things like that. The other thing I would say is Carly in the chat also said video, video, video. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 10,000 words. Like, don't skip over the power of video.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Janet. Appreciate you commenting on that, and agree that is something we see a lot here at Bonterra with the power of video, as well as in thank you messages, right? That's something we talk a lot about, is using that in addition to, and you can do that with your volunteers as well. Curly said an infographic has never gone viral. That is very true. We probably have time for one or two more questions. One came in for you, Jason, from Tina, asking if you can touch upon working with corporate volunteers and if those engagement strategies might change.
Oh, they're the best because they give money. They're the best because they give money. So one of the things that I've learned this from another organization. That I walked into the room, they had a huge screen and it had welcome and it had the name of the team there. And that's something that like we instilled, is that we had if you had a screen there and we had Wells Fargo show up and we had welcome Wells Fargo, they took a picture in front of that sign, right? And then they posted it up on their network. But like being very intentional about like why it is, like what are you getting from them, right? And we like, and, you know, I'm happy to talk more about this later, but essentially like some of the shifts that we created with the purpose of attracting donors, not because we actually needed the volunteer time for it. Based on the time of day, like we created shifts specifically for that. So be very intentional that to not say we're going to get these corporate volunteers and then put them into this thing that we already have, but I would create something that would entice and attract people, right? We don't want to go after people constantly. We want to attract people that are already looking for the work that we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's a good point. That takes us actually right to time here. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you wanted to add, any final nuggets. If not, I just wanted to Janet, go ahead.
There's a comment from a customer of NFG who says, is there ability to post a video and a thank you email? There are thank you videos under the acknowledgement tab. So check it, go to customer service, email me something. I can tell you how to do that.
Yeah, it's under the communications tab, click video, and you'll be able to send those out to either individuals or to a group. Thank you for calling that and catching that, Janet. This is why I ask for questions in the Q&A and not the chat. We'll start rolling in the chat. But thank you so much all for your engagement. You've been a wonderful audience here this afternoon or morning or evening, depending on where in the world you are. It's been great working with you today. Jason and Janet, really appreciate you both for bringing all of your knowledge and extensive experience to today's session. This was a really great combo to combine both that donor and volunteer engagement. So really appreciate both of your expertise. And I can see the thank yous rolling into the chat as well. So again, big thank you from me, big thank you from Bonterra. Thanks to our audience for being here. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Take care, folks.